On. Places, everyone. Where's Sherry Babcock? I seen her earlier, but I can't see her now. Oh, there she is. She moved. Well, here we are again. Hi, Mike. I was gone last week. I taught James's Sunday school class. You know what I taught it on? No. How to control your tongue. Did you learn something? It didn't work. I could teach that every week and it still wouldn't help, I don't think. I try. Hi, Gene. We're already started. Any praise reports or prayer requests? Marie?
Praise report. I think that the ladies' tea yesterday was a big success. We had close to 75 people, 75
Women?
ladies, and we had 3 young men from the youth group who served tea. And the missionaries were, I thought, wonderful, and I talked to Jim about maybe trying to get him at least, if nothing else, to come to this class and talk. But it was a lot of work for everybody, the WOM ladies, but I felt like it was well worth it.
How come men aren't invited to this?
Well,
for the same reason no women go to the wildlife.
That's what I was looking for.
that's it. That's it.
All right, good. I'm glad. Thank you. Thanks for the report. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Oh, yeah. How do you like that tuna fish?
I'll let you know you're in a second.
It's not tuna fish. It's chicken salad. Homemade. All right, any other prayer requests? He told me to do it. Yes, sir.
So, my wife Tracy has been going through a lot of medical.
Your wife's crazy?
Well, that too, but
Tracy. We'll pray for her.
right? But she's been going through a lot of medical issues lately with kidney stones, multiple surgeries on them, and
Oh, boy.
and then the Tampa VA messed her vein up. They gave her an IV arterially on accident and stuff, and it blew it out. Her vein all swelled up. Her arm was all messed up, and she's just been going through so much. And now her labs just came back, and they're all over the place. And
I'm in a lot of pain.
she just needs some prayers.
All right. We sure will. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, keep Tracy in your prayers. Someone, Teresa?
Yeah, our daughter Stephanie's had trouble with her arm and her neck for quite a few years. She just had another MRI done, and she has something with her vertebrae in her neck, and she's leaking spinal fluid. So just pray that she can find the right doctor to do whatever that needs to be done.
All right. Thank you.
We had a
Jim.
successful Young at Hearts trip to St. Augustine. We only had 2 falls this time.
2 falls.
That's how we judge the success of the trip, how many falls we have. So
That's good.
2 minor falls.
Yeah.
So good trip.
Good. You brought them all back?
Sherry only tripped you twice?
Yeah, only twice.
Well, good. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to ask prayers for my mother. I notice her, because of her short-term memory loss. I just believe that she's becoming more socially withdrawn. We're seeing that, and it's just sad.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Does she have trouble hearing? Or not
Maybe
really?
a little, but
Not much. All right, we'll keep her in prayer. Miss June. Hi, Sharon. Okay. Yes. Oh, Bill? He's trying to get by Paul right now. Okay, Bill. Joyce has got something to say.
I want to ask for prayers for, I got several friends that have cancer. Jackie Hobbs in Louisiana, Linda Fanning in Wisconsin, my brother Donald in Mississippi, my friend Kyle here in Florida. And it's one more. It's just seems like cancer is pervasive right now. And we just need prayer. And then prayer for this country. We're losing our way, and we need a revival. We need a revival, not just in this country, but throughout the world, but especially in this country because a lot of other countries look to us. So we need to pray for a revival.
Sure. Did you get all those names, Teresa? Thank you. Sharon?
I have a visitor that is from Alabama, and my grandson is going to bring her today to church, and she's not a Christian. So can we please pray that God works in her heart and shows her, you know.
What's her name?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I went in there and asked Janae, and she said it, and I forgot it already. I'm sorry, I don't know her that well, but God knows.
Right.
So anyway, she'll be here.
And your son's going to bring her. Your son's a Christian.
My grandson
your
is a
grandson.
Christian. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So be nice to her, Marie. She's from Alabama.
She's from Alabama. She lived in Florida. If she's from the South, I'll be real nice.
All right. Terry?
Rachel, you remember what happened a few years ago where she had an attack at the gym? Well,
Yes.
she's been having pains in her stomach and everything. Thursday at school, they rushed her to the hospital. They thought it was appendix. It wasn't appendix, but it's in that neighborhood. And while they were doing tests on her, she had another episode of what she had here
While she was there, huh?
while she was there. That's the only second one she's had of that. So they don't know what her problem is. They put her on meds, and she was like drunk when she came home because they put her on so much antidote.
Really?
So
All
just
right.
keep her in prayer. We don't
Keep
know
Rachel in
exactly what's
prayer.
wrong. So
Okay, thank you. Marie?
I asked for travel mercies for Paul. He's leaving tomorrow. He's flying to Houston tomorrow, and he'll be gone this week.
All right.
That gives her a week of reprieve.
That's good.
So, also we have two friends, Tom Von Olin, which we've asked for prayers for
Right.
before. He came home from the hospital, was home for a few days, and now he's back in the hospital. And they say the cancer is not gone. So I don't know. Just remember him in your prayers. And also we had another friend whose name is Rick Brown, who went in for a normal colonoscopy, and they sent him from the colonoscopy center directly to the hospital and did surgery the next morning because he had a huge mass, cancerous mass in his colon.
Whoa.
So just remember him too, please.
All right. Phew.
Lots going on.
Yeah. Anybody else? Sylvia?
My brother-in-law, Tony, is in the hospital. He's having something done with his aorta.
Tony?
Tony is his
Is that
name.
what you said?
Yes,
Tony?
Tony.
Okay.
Yes. So,
All right. And local?
yeah, he's at Trinity.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is that it? Jim?
Pray for my wife's health. It's slowly deteriorating, and I don't think she realizes as bad as it is. Her ankles are swelled up and have not gone down, and just kind of overall, she always has back issues. So,
Okay.
pray.
Pray for Joanne then.
Yeah.
There she is. Hi, Joanne. We're praying for your attitude. All right. What's that?
That tuna sandwich was good, by the way.
Yeah. They're really good. Okay, is that it? I don't know if God can handle any more. That's what he told us. That's good. We'll pray for you.
Thank you. 30 pounds to put on.
Oh, for crying out loud. Sharon, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Still pray for my son Donnie for his health.
For Donnie?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we will.
A number of things, and it's just affecting him.
Pray for Donnie. Thank you. All right. Let's do we have time to pray before we stop?
Yeah.
Okay. Father, thank you for this day you've given us. Father, thank you for the joy we have of coming together as a family and praising you and worshiping you and giving you our requests, Father. There are so many, it's overwhelming. Father, you know each one, and you have a plan, Father, and we trust you and we thank you. We just ask you to give peace and comfort and healing, and Father, you know, and we will trust you and continue to praise you and love you for who you are. And we thank you for Jesus now. We thank you for this day that you've given us. And we just ask you to be with Jim as he delivers the message. May we take it to heart. May our lives change because of it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Tuna fish sandwich might fix you right up there. They were good sandwiches. Thank you, Marie, for looking after some people in the church and leadership here that were hungry yesterday, that were not invited to a tea. And so, thank you. Yeah, so.
Well, we thought about you guys, so that's why we saved everything and brought it.
It was really gaily decorated. I went through there saying, this is really girly stuff here. They said, well, it was spring. It was really pretty. Today it's back to its drab fellowship hall. So, but it was really cute yesterday. And we'll look into getting your speaker back here before they leave. Let's see. Do I have any other snide remarks? No, not yet. I'll be thinking of them. We're on the tail end of our study. We got a few more lessons in the way back, how the church lost its credibility and how we gained it back. And today we're looking at another case study that was kind of the second half of this book, if you've ever read it, is a series of case studies of what the authors recommend we can do as a church to regain the credibility in a world where we've pretty much lost our credibility. And they use the early church as our example of things that we can do to make a difference in the world. Now, in the ancient world, widows and orphans were a problem. They've been a problem throughout church history and really, frankly, throughout world history. What to do with those widows and what to do with those orphans. Women's rights were non-existent. In most cases, in most societies, they were chattel property. Sorry, women, but that's the way it was back then. Be thankful where you are today when you own us. Without a husband, back in those days, a woman did not exist. It did not exist. If a woman became a widow, they were left to scavenge from the scraps of society. And in some cultures, believe it or not, widows were killed when their husbands died because there would be nobody to take care of them. In fact, in India, it was a prevalent practice even into the 19th century. It's as horrible as it is. A widow would be burned alive on her husband's funeral pyre. It was a practice known as sati. It was one of those practices that early missionary William Carey fought against as a missionary to India. In fact, because of his efforts, it was outlawed in the 19th century. Orphans were the same way. They were in the same boat. They were insignificant. War, pestilence, famine, disease, prostitution, rape, and a host of other scourges did their best to make sure there would be a bumper crop of unwanted infants. Through the years, governments have debated, what do we do with these abandoned children? Rome left them to die outside the city walls or on the city walls. Others saw an opportunity and sold them as slaves. But the early church was a ray of hope for those abandoned widows and orphans. And with this backdrop in the culture, the way the early church treated widows and orphans stood out as a beacon of light and hope. James 1:27 says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this. What? To visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Apparently what the world trashes and wants to throw away still matters to Almighty God. From the earliest days of Christianity, the church has endeavored to do something to help these most vulnerable ones in society. It began with the early church scouring the walls at night, looking for abandoned infants that they would take into their own home. And if you couldn't take them into your own home, maybe you could help and help the family who could take in children and help them provide food, clothing, and shelter financially. So the church banded together to take in the unwanted children. There was never any stop to this effort because there was always abundance of children put out to die of exposure. And this was the reason that orphanages were started by the church in later years. In the United States, the modern foster system has all but eliminated the need for traditional orphanages, even though there are some. And of course, internationally, orphanages like the ones we support in Haiti are still very viable. Do you know that the modern day foster care system was developed by a Christian? His name, Charles Loring Brace.
A man named Charles Loring Brace had moved to New York from Connecticut about this time and was appalled by what he saw. Having studied theology, he was unsure that a church ministry would be his calling. Instead, he chose to work with the poor at a New York City mission.
He had seen the poverty of New York firsthand and wanted to do something about it.
Brace observed,
"The truth seems to be that each infant needs one nurse or caretaker, and that if you place these delicate creatures in large companies together in any public building, an immense proportion are sure to die."
When Reverend Charles Loring Brace noticed all of the overcrowded tenements and kids on the street, he knew that something had to happen.
Brace founded the Children's Aid Society in 1853. The society facilitated the placing out of children from existing orphanages. Later, in his 1872 book, Brace explained,
"Most touching of all was the crowd of wandering little ones who immediately found their way to the office. Ragged young girls who had nowhere to lay their heads, children driven from drunkards' homes, orphans who slept where they could find a box or stairway, boys cast out by stepmothers or stepfathers, newsboys whose incessant answer to our question, 'Where do you live?' rang in our ears, 'Don't live nowhere.' Little bootblacks, young peddlers, canal boys who seemed to drift into the city every winter and live a vagabond life. Pickpockets and petty thieves trying to get honest work. Child beggars and flower sellers growing up to intercourses of crime. All this motley throng of infantile misery and childish guilt passed through our doors, telling their simple stories of suffering and loneliness and temptation until our hearts became sick."
During this time period, homeless people were considered criminals, that if you were homeless, you deserved it. And he really had the forward thinking to realize that these children were born into it. They didn't really have a choice.
Brace began wondering whether farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere, many eager for a helping hand, might welcome these children.
They needed help establishing their claims and homesteads. And so he set up, it was kind of an indenture program where the children were expected to work for their room and board, work on the farm, help establish their claim. But then the parents in turn were supposed to educate them, send them to Sunday school, send them to church, give them a good Christian upbringing as well.
Brace wrote in his book,
We hope especially to be the means of draining the city of these children by communicating with farmers, manufacturers, or families in the country who may have need of such for employment.
In September 1854, Brace's dream of sending children to new homes in the rural West became a reality when the first orphan train was sent to Dowagiac, Michigan. The society sent 47 boys and girls, ages 7 to 15. The test was deemed a success, and more trains carried children away from New York in the subsequent years. Within 10 years of the first orphan train being sent to the Midwest, the nation was embroiled in the Civil War. The war created thousands of orphans and half-orphans who were ultimately placed on the orphan trains.
On these orphan trains. The Children's Aid Society still exists, based in New York City. Over the years, a quarter million or more orphans found foster homes out west.
The orphan train movement began in 1854 with the Children's Aid Society. It would grow with 30 placing out organizations, and they would place children from New York and other cities out east, later from the Midwest, across the United States. They were taking children from lodging houses and orphanages who did not have any parents to take care of them, and so those children were destined for a life in an orphanage or on the streets of New York. And so they wanted to take those children and put them into homes out west, where they would not only have parents, but a family unit and a community to fall back on. But it's the beginning of foster care in America. There's a lot of numbers thrown about of how many children are placed out, but at least 250,000 kids were placed out in a 75-year period. With the other organizations that decide to also place out in this manner, that number could raise at least to probably 350,000. The impact of the orphan train movement is massive and hard to comprehend at times. Of course, the orphan train riders went on to become parents and have children and grandchildren, and we know that there's at least 40 million descendants living today. It always amazes me today that I think of Marion in 1911, where they take in tons of orphan train riders, and then communities, unfortunately today, can't find enough foster care homes. But I know they're there, and oftentimes we just don't know they're there until it's, right in front of our face. And I guess that's what the orphan train did, is it was better at putting it in front of your face. And oftentimes I find the orphan train and foster care movement are talked about the same way, where both programs are broken and both programs needed desperate help, and somehow that falls onto the child. And now that makes that child undesirable. And that is not okay. The child is still in need, regardless of the situation they find themselves in. It's not their fault. They bear the brunt of what we can't do.
That museum is in Concordia, Kansas, if you're ever in that vicinity. Eventually, the foster care system in the country evolved into a mix of public and private agencies, but on any given day in America, there are 450,000 kids who need a home. Almost 500,000 kids needing a home.
Jim, I think Father Flanagan's Boys Town is still very active today.
Mm-hmm. He brought in a lot of unwanted kids, did he not? Where was he based? Father Flanagan.
I want to think he was out in the Midwest. I'm not exactly sure.
Somewhere.
Nevada, Nebraska. Nebraska, was it Nebraska?
Right. Now, the orphan train did get some criticism. Oh, you just need some farm workers, so you just want some kids. No, they were actually brought into their families, and after a period of time, they were free to leave if they wanted to, but they became parts of the family, and they regarded, in many cases, their parents were their foster parents because they had been abandoned or left alone for whatever reason in society. There are thousands and thousands of compassionate and dedicated foster parents and workers in this country, but far too often it's the abuses that make the headlines. The system may not work as well as it should, and there are some downsides to it. 54% of foster children, only 54%, earn a high school diploma. Only 2% will ever finish college. 51% become unemployed. and 84% become parents way too soon themselves, repeating the cycle of neglect and abuse. That's the dark side of the foster care system. However, there are a lot of positives. The organization United Friends of Children says the lives of foster youth are disproportionately marked with violence. Some foster youth who have been removed from their families because of violence are re-traumatized by violence or abuse while in foster care. 40% report severe physical punishment in their foster home. 15% report sexual abuse. So it's not a perfect picture, but it's still better than having no parents, nothing, when 85% report fairly normal parents in that picture. There are heroes out there, a group of people who could fix this problem. The church. Just as the early church transformed the attitudes of the Romans by taking in those unwanted and abandoned children, the modern church could do something with foster care. We have over 300,000 churches in America. Now, granted, there are some cults thrown in for good measure, and if you take them out, we still have probably 200,000 evangelical churches in America. If each one would take in 2 kids, we'd wipe out this problem overnight. Overnight. If we'd take in 2. If we just take in 1, we would make a big dent in it. Billy?
Y'all remember my nephew and his wife were here about last month sometime. They were here on vacation. They came 2 weeks. That's Larry and Joan. Larry and Joan, about 15 years ago, brought a foster child into their home and then adopted him. And it's been a great experience for them. But what's unusual about that is, first of all, it was an older child. Secondly, a black child. Thirdly, mentally challenged. But it's been a great experience for them. So,
God will bless you if you'll do this. And at some of our ages, it's not really practical, but we can still be a ramrod to get programs like that going in our church. What would happen to our culture if we did that? If every church adopted one church? We're not talking about every family in a church. We're just talking one church, one adoption. One church, one foster care family. That would seem to be a doable objective, a doable goal for any church to do that. Here in Florida, there's a model program in Fort Lauderdale called, launched by Calvary Chapel down there. They called it For Kids. And here's their logo that you see on the screen.
Lizzie, I want you to go high. Go.
Older brother's 14 and the sibling's 7 years old. She's a female, and her date of birth is March 12th. That's right. Yeah, the mother, she hasn't been seen for over a week. These 4 fingers right there. Let's do your thumbprint. Okay, put your right there. Or you can go stay right there.
Hi, I got this lady Jacob Rogers, just removed.
Okay. Do you have any birth?
I got the date of birth, but no birth certificates, no nothing. Parents are on my suspected substance abuse. We got it court tomorrow. Fingerprints have been done.
Hey guys, welcome. I'm Miss Stacy. What's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob, it's nice to meet you. What's your name? Lizzie, it's nice to meet you. Can I take your bag? You guys want to change of clothes?
No, I'm good.
Are you hungry? Let's go get something to eat.
It's okay. We're gonna figure this out.
Alright, well this is a safe place and you guys are actually going to stay with us for a little while until we can find you a foster family. So you guys are going to stay with us tonight, is that okay? If you guys want to take a shower or you're looking for something, you can just ask me, okay? We're excited to have you here.
So we just got the news that a foster family has been found for your sister. So tomorrow your sister's going to be leaving to go live with that family. But right now they're only prepared to take one child, so you're going to be staying with us for a little bit while longer until they find a foster home for you as well, okay? So if you need anything, let me know. Hey Lizzie. Mr. and Mrs. Williams are here to see you. You're gonna go stay with them for a little while, okay? So you wanna go get your backpack? Let's go. Hi, Nancy.
Lizzie, it's gonna be okay.
What if we
okay?
don't want to
You gotta go. Yes, Lizzie, look at me. Lizzie, you gotta go.
What are our options? Well, as of right now, Jacob doesn't have a foster home placement, so if that's something that you're interested in, it's definitely something we can discuss further.
Okay.
Can't separate.
This program is unique in South Florida. It's the only one of its kind. The shelter is open 365 days a year. A decade ago, the foster care system in South Florida was so overcrowded and in need of restructuring. 4Kids was launched to help meet this need, to provide new foster homes, and it wasn't long before the community responded. It's a Christian organization founded by Calvary Chapel over there, which is now the go-to place for law enforcement and social services when they come across this need and a child that needs a home. 4Kids involvement doesn't end when a child reaches 18 years of age. Rather than being put out on the street, they've developed an independent living program that fills that gap by giving young adults a roof over their heads, and they mentor them in their guide them in the next phase of their lives. What if every church in America could catch this vision? With 450,000 foster kids and some 300,000 churches, we could wipe out the problem in 1 year. How would that impact the kids? And what would that say to society? What would that do to the image of the church and the credibility of the church as an organization that cares for unwanted children? If the Bible's definition of true religion is visiting orphans in their affliction, this would certainly be a great place to start. Let me say a few words about adoption, which is often the next step in foster care. So often, very often, the foster care families will adopt the kids that come through their doors. I was deeply involved in adoption years ago. First of all, I am an adoptive parent of a now 43-year-old. Secondly, I was married to a lady who had the largest adoption agency in the state of Florida for many years. That adoption agency played a part in over 1,000 adoptions and convinced tens of thousands of young ladies not to abort their babies and provided needy families with the children they long desired. Don't forget, all of us are adopted. We're adopted into the family of God. His unchanging plan has always been to adopt us into his own family by sending Jesus Christ to die for us. And he did this because he wanted to. Ephesians 1:5 in the Living Bible. And while we are in the family of God, we are challenged to become involved with those children who have no family. You could be the one to give them a home and an entree into God's family. Kenny, why don't you come up here and tell us a little bit about your experience with foster care and adoption? I mean, you are one of the models we look to in this regard.
It's overwhelming.
Okay, well, yes, Paul?
Many years ago, when Hillsborough County was hosting a legislative forum dealing with juvenile delinquency and dependency, I was asked to serve on that particular committee. And I listened to these members of the legislature from Florida try to find ways and means to stop the recidivism rate of juvenile crime. And I used the example of the Sheriff's Boys Ranch and Sheriff's Girls Villa, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and suggested that that would be a perfect program for expanding that program with state support to go forward to curb juvenile delinquency. And their response from the legislature was, we can't do that because it's Christian oriented. So that was, and I felt like getting up and just walking out because I minored in the legal and administrative aspects of juvenile delinquency in my undergraduate school. So, you know, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating when you get members of the legislature who summarily reject a working program that puts kids on the right path in the future, such as the Boys Ranch and Girls Villa, sponsored by the Florida Sheriffs. And there are similar programs throughout the whole United States sponsored by sheriffs.
Some of you others have experience with the foster care or adoption, or Sharon?
I feel the same like Kenny does because it is heart-wrenching. The judge gave me custody of Janae years ago, but I knew that I had to adopt her because if something ever happened to me, she would go back in foster care. So I went ahead and applied, and I got her, but it took many, many years because of that them people that was involved with adoption and stuff. They were giving these children to anybody that would take them. I don't care if you were a murderer or they didn't even check it. And everything was put underneath the table. So it did take a long time for me to adopt her because they got caught and they had to dot all their, you know, everything in line. It had to go. Anyways, if I was younger, I would adopt more, but I'm not. But I said I'm going to protect Janae. So I adopted her, and then I will give her to a member of my family that is a Christian that will see her through her walk.
If it comes to that.
If it comes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could get into an accident, whatever, but it's all written down where she will go if something happens to me.
Okay.
And I'm very much touched with this. I really am. I could cry. But I am so happy that I have her because she's made my life complete. She's a challenge, but I'll tell you something. God has blessed me.
I can up your challenge stories probably. But it all comes out well at the end.
Yes,
so
it does.
Other experiences with foster care? Yes.
If it wasn't for me and George, our granddaughter would have been put in foster home. We have permanent guardianship of her. My son is threatening that he's going to petition the court to get her back. He's not stable enough to take care of her. And we tried to put her in different VPKs, and God sent us here. She's been here since VPK. Everybody that knows her, Scarlett, how much she's achieved since she's been here. And if they ever get her back, she won't even be in school.
Mm-hmm. There are little stories here and there of how God is using our VPK, how He's using our school, how He's using our body of believers here. Sherry?
My brother was adopted, and he and his older siblings were abandoned, and law enforcement was called, and they found them hiding in a closet. And my brother was something like 2.5 maybe, and they were put into the Missouri Baptist Children's Home. And each child was adopted separately, but the 2 older siblings remembered everything, but my brother did not because he was younger. But when he became old enough to understand that he had a brother and a sister, the parents of each adopted child would keep in touch regularly. We would meet at a central location, and one parent would take the 3 kids for 2 weeks. Then we'd meet back. We'd have a picnic, everybody bring food, and bring the kids back. And we did this every summer until the kids were out of school, and up until the time that my brother passed away, they all kept in touch. One of the parents was elderly, and they passed away a lot sooner than Mom and Dad did. But we always felt like we had an extended family. It just wasn't us. It was 2 other families. And my mom and dad, my mom said she walked into that room filled with kids, and she saw my brother with black eyes and black hair and said, "That's the one I want."
And she had no choice with you. She got what she got.
And then she didn't think she could have kids. And then, like, a 1.5 or 2 years later, here I am, you know. So.
My daughter would throw it into her brother, my son's face, that, you know, they chose me. They sought after me. They knew what they were getting with me. With you, they had no choice. They had to take what they got. So.
And my brother adopted then as well.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, he adopted.
And every adoption is a little bit different. Some want to have that connection with siblings and parents. They want to know who their parents are. Others have no desire. That's the case in my daughter. She has no desire to even meet her birth mother, and that's fine. You know, it's her decision at this point. And under Florida law, both parties have to consent before the office in Jacksonville of Children and Family Services will connect them. So if one party does not want to reestablish a relationship, it's not going to happen. But if both parties are interested, they will match the 2 up.
But this is how bad it is. A friend of mine has her home filled with foster care, and she's doing this as a single mom. And she had a child the other day that she said left about a year ago, and the suitcase was full of clothes, toys, suitcases, everything that child could want or need. Got a call 2 days ago, and she has the child back now with nothing but the clothes on their back.
Mm.
So does the legal system fail us sometimes with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
Kenny up here.
We had a
Hold on a
class.
second. Okay.
We had a class here in basics for the to get licensed for foster care, and just in our church we had probably a dozen people, probably 6 or 8 families that were willing to do it, and it was we were getting licensed through the children's home, the Baptist Children's Home, and they made it so difficult for these families to get licensed. I mean, you have to go through a lot of steps, and rightly so, but trying to get a call back from them and trying to get the paperwork correct, and they were virtually no help, and all but 2 of those families abandoned the process because it was just arduous. It was horrible. I was so disappointed because they could have had another 8 or 10 foster homes, and they got 2. And
foster care and adoption's gotten very, very, a lot of red tape.
A lot of red tape, and the government doesn't want to
studies.
give it up because that's their power and that's their employment and everything else. So unfortunately, now that the government has it, they're not going to give it up. You know, it's just not going to go away because we all of a sudden. But it's got to be from the church. It can't be from like Paul was talking about the other organizations. They might be Christian based, but a lot of them aren't Christians probably that are involved or hired by the government or by the sheriff's department. It's got to be us. It's got to be us in the church that have a heart that want to do it. And I mean, it could certainly be done. It certainly could be.
Other stories of foster care, adoption? Any orphan-trained descendants here?
Well, there is another faith-based organization that's slowly trying to make a move in Florida. I don't know if you've heard of it. In Tennessee, Justin's mother-in-law works with Isaiah 117 house.
No, I'm not familiar with them.
And they're actually opening their first house over in the Jacksonville area.
Really?
What's the name, please? Isaiah 117, after the verse about the widows and the orphans in Isaiah 117. And they build a home, an actual house. It's not like, maybe it might have 2 or maybe 3 bedrooms. It's not like an orphanage style.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to work closely with the DCF and make that day that you saw in that picture, that removal day. Oh.
That's hard. That's hard.
But it's all donated. This home is everybody. She goes after a lot of organizations, and they all donate to build this house. And one of the features is that it has a red front door.
Every house is
Every
white
house.
with a red front door.
And if you want, we have a Woods house right over there, and I would do all the work for free to make it one.
This
of those.
area
Needs it.
Yeah. So they bring the kids there during that day or 2 until they find foster care. And when I saw those trash bags.
And if the kids want to make, cookies at 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody is there to do that with them. I mean, it really is a wonderful organization.
They do whatever they want with them for that
Renee
time.
has poured her heart and soul into this.
Yeah.
Could
And
you
many
get us
other
some more
people have.
information on it?
Sure.
Yep, I mean, if
Yeah.
they're moving into Florida,
They're
be nice.
slowly, yeah, they were. Yeah, the founder Rhonda was from northern Tennessee, and she's big in Washington. I mean, she goes to speak to committees and to organizations, and it's grown out. There's Indiana. It's growing, but there's finally one here in Florida. But it's to get rid of that story where the foster kids were in the Wawa parking lot and in the employee's office overnight. It helps to make that transition time somewhat nice. So.
And unfortunately, think how scarred some of these kids are at their tender age, being moved around from foster home to foster home, never knowing what their home is, or a family.
And the whole second floor is just filled with clothing and toys and baby stuff. And so whatever they want, they can go up there.
Like Sunday school classes will take a project. Like this Sunday school class would collect pajamas and donate just pajamas, or we'd go and do the yard work. Or they had what's that when you're a high up Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, came and made a playground for the back. So a lot of organizations and a lot of churches can contribute to the building and the ongoing support of the house. It's very and DCF uses it also as a meeting place. When you have like what's that called, visitation, where it has to be supervised visitation, they have a room where that can take place as well. So it's a great organization. Isaiah 117.
Okay.
The garbage bags are real because that's what these kids come into.
Hang on a minute.
They come in with garbage bags. That's very real. That's what they come in with is garbage bags with their stuff in it. What little they have.
There's an organization around here too that does a backpack drive where they collect backpacks.
Yeah.
Backpacks instead of
Garbage bags.
Yeah, they come
Paul?
with garbage bags.
During our field studies when I was in undergraduate school dealing with juvenile delinquency and dependency, we learned an interesting fact in our study that there were no Jewish or Oriental kids in the juvenile justice system in the state of Maryland. And we wanted to know why. With regard to the Jewish kids, when they got in trouble, the local rabbi automatically and routinely intervened with the juvenile courts to take that youngster under his wing and watch out for him, and the courts would release that child to that rabbi. With regard to the Oriental kids, the saving of face philosophy among Orientals is so strong that alone keeps the kids in line, that you don't want to do anything to bring disrespect to the family name.
the strong family unit.
You follow what I'm saying? You follow what I'm
strong
saying?
families.
Yeah. So that was it. That was an interesting study we did. Couldn't figure out why there were no Jewish or Oriental kids in the Maryland school system, juvenile school system.
And years ago, adoption was much simpler. You know, there was a doctor in town who delivered an unwanted pregnancy and knew of a couple in town that wanted a baby, and maybe there were legal papers, maybe there weren't. Maybe they just handed over the baby to this couple that was looking for a child, and they grew up in that family. So, we have made it a lot more cumbersome with rules. And granted, the legislature probably thinks they're protecting the children, protecting their well-being, their health, and wanting to make sure they don't fall into involuntary servitude and slavery of some sort, or sexual exploitation.
It starts with a good reason, but
Yeah.
it blows up to be
And unfortunately, sometimes they try to legislate their way into protecting these things, and it backfires because it just is a big red door to, a big door, just a big door to get through to effect an adoption or foster care. Any further comments? We have a few more minutes. Well, it hits a lot of our hearts, does it not? And that's because we're all adopted. We're all adopted into God's family, and we should be willing to adopt anybody that we see and if we feel impressed upon that needs a home, that needs a helping hand, that needs even temporary housing. We should have open doors for people, because we all are part of the family of God.
Now you'll notice we say brother and sister around here. You know why? It's because we're a family, and these folks are so dear. When one has a heartache, we all share the tears and rejoice in each victory in this family so dear. Help me out now. I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain, cleansed by His blood, joint heirs with Jesus as we travel this
for I'm part of the family of God. From the door of an orphanage to the house of the King, no longer an outcast, a new song I sing. From rags unto riches, from the weak to the strong. I'm not worthy to be here, but praise God I belong. Sing the song. I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain, cleansed by His blood. Joiners with Jesus as we travel this side, for I'm part of the family of God. Yes, I'm part of the family of God. Archie Clay. Thoughts? Let's pray then. Father, thank you for adopting us into your family. Without it, we would be poor, lost, miserable inhabitants of earth, heading to an eternal life of torture and torment. But because you loved us, because you provided a way of salvation on the cross, we can be part of your family, joint heirs with Christ. We can't even imagine what is laid up for us in heaven, where eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, nor even entered into the hearts of men, the things that you have prepared for those that love him. Father, continue to touch our hearts for the abandoned, the unwanted, the children who've been left behind. Father, convict us and direct us how we can make a difference in our community, in this state, in this county, and provide shelter and housing, in hope, in a future, and salvation for children in need. Father, it's near and dear to many of our hearts, and Lord, if there's something that we can do, please open our hearts and minds to the answer. One church, one family. It's not a high bar to reach. And Father, we just ask that you would use us and help us to be useful in your kingdom and to bring light, safety, health, education, wholeness to a new generation of Christ followers. We'll ask all these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.